Imagine two people standing at the edge of a river. One has a boat, a map, and supplies for the journey. The other has nothing but the clothes on their back. If both of them want to reach the other side, who do you think will make it across? The answer seems obvious, right? But what if I told you that the person without the boat isn't just facing a physical challenge? Their mind, their very way of thinking, has already changed because of what they don't have. And that invisible change, that shift in how their brain works, is what keeps them trapped on the wrong side of the river year after year, generation after generation. Let's talk about the psychology of poverty, not the money part, not the economic theories. What happens inside the human mind when someone lives without enough? Poverty doesn't just empty your wallet, it rewires your brain. And once you understand how this happens, you'll see why escaping poverty is never just about working harder or wanting it more. Let's start with something scientists call the scarcity mindset. When you don't have enough of something, whether it's money, time, or food, your brain goes into emergency mode. Researchers like Senthil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir discovered something fascinating. When people experience scarcity, their minds become completely focused on what's missing. It's like trying to have a conversation while someone is blasting loud music right next to you. You can't think about anything else. Now, you might think this intense focus would help someone solve their problems. This tunnel vision actually makes everything worse. When your mind is constantly worried about paying rent next week or feeding your children tomorrow, you lose the mental space to think about next year. You can't plan for the future when the present is screaming at you for attention. A person living in poverty might know that going back to school could change their life. But when they're 3 days away from eviction, that knowledge doesn't matter. Their brain literally cannot process long-term planning because it's using all its power to handle the immediate crisis. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman, who won a Nobel Prize for his work, showed us that our brains have limited processing capacity. Think of it like a smartphone with too many apps running at once. Everything slows down. Everything becomes harder. Well, poverty is like having a dozen apps draining your battery all day, every day. The mental load is crushing. And this isn't a choice. This isn't weakness. This is how human brains respond to constant stress and uncertainty. Living in poverty changes how you see time itself. When you've experienced hunger, when you've had the electricity shut off, when you've watched opportunities slip away because you couldn't afford them, something shifts inside you. Your brain learns a painful lesson. The future is unreliable. Tomorrow might not come, so you stop investing in it. Psychologists call this present bias, and it's not stupidity, it's survival. If you don't know where your next meal is coming from, saving money for retirement seems absurd. If you've never seen stability, planning for 5 years from now feels like a fantasy. Think about it this way. Imagine you're walking through a desert. You're desperately thirsty. Someone offers you a choice. You can have a small glass of water right now, or you can wait 3 hours and get a gallon. What would you choose? Most people would grab that small glass immediately. But if you weren't thirsty, if you knew water was always available, you'd wait for the gallon. That's what poverty does. It makes every decision feel like that desperate moment in the desert. Now let's talk about something even more painful. The damage to self-belief. Psychologist Martin Seligman spent decades studying something called learned helplessness. He found that when people or animals experience repeated failure, when they try again and again, but nothing changes, they eventually stop trying. Their brain learns that effort doesn't matter. This isn't giving up because you're lazy. This is your brain trying to protect you from more pain. Imagine applying for jobs and getting rejected 50 times. Imagine starting a small business that fails because you couldn't afford proper equipment. Imagine watching your friends climb up while you keep sliding back down. Not because you work less, but because the ladder itself is broken where you're standing. After enough of these experiences, a voice starts whispering in your mind. Why bother? Nothing I do makes a difference. And that voice, that belief, becomes the strongest chain of all. But here's where people get it wrong. They look at someone in poverty who's stopped trying and they think, see, they just don't want it enough. But that person probably wanted it more than anyone. They tried harder than most people ever have to try. They just tried so many times without success that their brain rewired itself to avoid more pain. Learned helplessness isn't a personality trait. It's a wound. And like any wound, it can heal, but it needs the right treatment. There's another piece to this puzzle: the stress hormone cortisol. When you live in poverty, your body is constantly pumping out cortisol because you're always in survival mode. Scientists have found that elevated cortisol levels damage the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, memory, and planning. It's like trying to drive a car with a damaged steering wheel. You know where you want to go, but the vehicle won't respond properly. People in poverty aren't making bad decisions because they're less intelligent. They're making stress decisions because their brain chemistry has been altered by constant worry. And then there are the invisible barriers, the ones you can't see unless you've lived them. When you grow up in poverty, you don't just lack money. You lack information. You lack connections. You lack the financial literacy that wealthy families pass down through generations. You don't know that credit scores exist until yours is already damaged. You don't know how investing works because no one around you has ever invested. You don't know which opportunities to look for because you've never seen anyone seize them. Knowledge isn't just power. Knowledge is inheritance. And when that inheritance is missing, you're starting a race 10 miles behind everyone else, and you don't even know there was a starting line. So here's the difficult truth. Most people who remain poor aren't making bad choices. They're making the only choices their circumstances allow. When your car breaks down and you need it for work, you can't afford to wait and save up for a good mechanic. You go to the cheap one who does a poor job, which means the car breaks down again in 3 months, and you end up paying more in the long run. Poverty forces you into expensive decisions. It forces you to think short-term. It forces you to choose survival over growth. And then the world looks at these forced choices and calls them mistakes. But here's what matters. Here's why understanding all of this isn't just about sympathy. It's about solutions. Because once you see the psychological trap, you can start breaking free from it. Not easily, not overnight, but it becomes possible. The first step is recognizing that your brain has adapted to scarcity, and that adaptation, while it helped you survive, might now be holding you back. This recognition isn't about blame. It's about awareness. You're not broken. You're responding exactly how humans respond to these conditions. But you can start training your brain to respond differently. Start small. Psychologist Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset shows that believing you can change, believing that abilities can be developed, actually rewires your brain over time. Instead of thinking, I'm bad with money, try thinking, I haven't learned this yet, but I can. That single word, yet, opens a door. It tells your brain that change is possible. Second, find ways to reduce the mental load. This sounds impossible when you're juggling 5 problems at once, but even small changes help. Automate whatever you can. Set up automatic bill payments if possible, even if it's just for one bill. Use apps that round up purchases and save the change. These tiny systems remove decisions from your day, freeing up mental space for bigger thinking. Every decision you don't have to make manually is energy saved for more important choices. Third, connect with people who have escaped similar circumstances. Not to compare yourself, but to learn their specific strategies. How did they handle setbacks? What knowledge did they wish they'd had earlier? Community isn't just emotional support. It's practical intelligence sharing. And when you see someone who started where you started and made progress, it weakens that learned helplessness. Your brain starts believing that maybe, just maybe, effort can matter. Fourth, invest in financial education, but start with the basics. Don't try to understand complex investing when you're still figuring out how to budget. Find free resources online. Libraries offer financial literacy programs. Many communities have nonprofit organizations that teach money management specifically for people starting from zero. The goal isn't to become a financial expert overnight. The goal is to chip away at that knowledge gap, one small lesson at a time. Fifth, practice future thinking in small doses. If planning for 5 years from now feels impossible, plan for next month, then 3 months, then 6. Gradually train your brain to look further ahead. Set one tiny long-term goal, something small enough that it feels achievable. Maybe it's saving $20 a month for a year. Maybe it's taking one free online course. The goal itself matters less than the practice of future planning. You're rebuilding that muscle. Sixth, address the stress. This isn't luxury advice. This is survival advice. High cortisol is actively damaging your decision-making ability. Find free ways to reduce stress. Walking, breathing exercises, anything that signals to your body that you're safe, even for 10 minutes a day. When your stress levels drop, your cognitive function improves. You literally become better at solving problems. Seventh, and this is crucial, reject the shame. The story that poverty tells about you is a lie. You are not poor because you're lazy, stupid, or morally deficient. You are navigating an incredibly complex set of psychological and systemic challenges that would break most people. The fact that you're still trying, still searching for answers, still reading about solutions, proves that you haven't given up. And that matters more than you know. Finally, understand that breaking free from poverty is rarely a straight line. There will be setbacks. There will be months where you slide backward. This isn't failure. This is the reality of climbing a mountain while carrying weight that others don't have to carry. Progress might be slower than you want, but slow progress is still progress. And every small step you take rewires your brain a little more, builds your confidence a little more, and moves you a little further from that mental trap of scarcity thinking. The psychology of poverty is real. The barriers are real. The exhaustion is real. But so is human resilience. So is the capacity for change. Your brain adapted to survive scarcity. Now you can help it adapt to pursue possibility. It won't be easy. It won't be quick. But it is possible. And understanding why you're stuck is the first step toward getting unstuck. You're not fighting against laziness or bad character. You're fighting against brain patterns built by circumstances. And unlike money, unlike opportunities, unlike all those external things you couldn't control, your brain patterns can change. They can grow. They can learn new ways. Starting today, starting with one small decision. One small step toward thinking like someone who has enough. Because that's how you eventually become someone who has enough. By thinking your way there first, one thought at a time, one choice at a time, until the tunnel vision fades and you can finally see the other side of that river.